This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Agunar of Shabbos, as we prepare for Shabbos Parshas Korach, Haba Aleinu L'Tova. The argument of Korach v'Adasai was propelled by a certain situation where the Medrash tells us that Korach donned his 250 men with begadim made out of tchelas. And he comes to Moshe and he says, Talish shekula tchelas, chayev tchelas or pater. So the question is, this seems like such an external thing to Machlokes Korach v'Adasai. Korach's taina was Moshe Rabbeinu, u'madua tisnasu al kal Hashem. What's he bringing in tchelas? Enough with the tchelas already. How many weeks do we talk about tchelas? What is Korach doing, bringing tchelas into his argument? It seems like such a random external thing. Says the Heilige Chasam Sofer in the name of his Rebbe, Rabbi Glatstein Adler, that look at a beged of tchelas. If it's entirely made out of tchelas, the argument of Korach was, why would you need to put one string in one prominent location? The whole thing already is tchelas. It needs a leader. It needs tchelas on the corner. Already the whole thing is tchelas. So therefore Korach is saying like this. The same way a beged that's entirely tchelas does not need more tchelas in a prominent position. Klal Yisrael, Ki Kol Ha'eda, Kulam Kedoshim, we don't need a leader. So Moshe said, you're wrong. A beged that's kula tchelas does need tchelas in a prominent position. And even though, yes, Ki Kol Ha'eda, Kulam Kedoshim, but we do need a manik. So there, Rabbi Glatstein Adler is saying the argument of tchelas was exactly analogous to what Korach's point that he was trying to make. Look at number 1. Uve medrash yesh shehilbisham tala shekula tchelas. Ayin perish Rashi. Rashi brings down the whole episode. Ubir moiri hagoin chosid shebekuna. My Rebbe, the Goin, the righteous one of the Kohanim, Hagoin of Glatstein Adler, Zechatzak Levracha. By the way, somebody once said about Rabbi Glatstein Adler, he was like a malach. Chasam Sofer was offended. He said he's like a malach. He's much greater than a malach. A tzaddik is greater than a malach. Why? Because we pass him like Beis Hillel. Aretz nivra tchila. Right? Aretz nivra. A tzaddik, somebody who uses his bechira is even greater than a malach. Right? Chagiga, Lotaf. Chagiga, Yud Beis Amanach.
My wife calls me malach. Ich bin kein Mensch.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So he says like this. Shazeh me'yin machlokes Korach hutan ki kol eda klum kadoshim ve'in tzach lamaner u'Moshe kishem shesavru b'tala shekul tcheles u'Moshe heishav shegam tala shekula tcheles chay b'tzitzis v'hachanami. Says Moshe, even if the eda is kulam kadoshim, they still need a manik. Moshe says, Korach v'Adasai says to Moshe, Rav lachem ki kol ha'eda kulam kadoshim u'madua tisnasu al kahal Hashem. Now, this should immediately trigger in your mind when you see in a pasuk the word Rav, and you see in the pasuk the word Kol. That should remind you of the difference in expression of Esav and Yaakov. What does Esav says? Yeshli Rav. What does Yaakov say? Yeshli Kol. Yeshli Kol. So it says a Heilige Chasam Sofer again. It says Rav lachem ki kol eda klum kadoshim. Why is it that Esav says Rav and Yaakov says Kol? The midah of Rishon is to say, yeah, I basically have what I need, but I'm still missing a couple of things. But a tzaddik says Yesh li Kol, he's already content. He's content. Whatever the Rebbeinu Shalom gives him is everything. So Korach says to Moshe, the fact that you need this position, that shows that you're missing without it. You need to be the rabbi. Well, you can't be like a regular Jew. You have to sit up there in the Mizrach Vant. Obviously, you need the kavod. You have the midah of Esav, of Rav lachem. But the Eda, we don't need the kavod. We're begeder Yaakov, we're Kol. And therefore, madua tisnasu al kahal Hashem. In other words, the Chasam Sofer is explaining the language choice that Korach used. He's saying the biggest insult he could say to Moshe is, Rav, you're like Esav, Rav lachem. You have the midah of Rav. Look at number 2, Rav lachem.
Rabbi Korach was the wealthiest man in the world. He needs the power. You could say to him, well, what do you mean? You don't need the power. You can do whatever you want. Moshe, he saw Moshe went to Paro. He saw Moshe with purest. He saw Moshe went up to Shemayim, and he has a chutzpah to call him.
The answer is, what do people need more, money or kavod? Kavod. In fact, there was once a big conference of Rabbanim, and one Rav got up to say that believe everybody should accept what I'm saying because I'm already an old man and I don't need kavod anymore. And Rabbi Glatstein said, no, you're an old man. You don't have food. You don't have any other pleasures in life. All you have is kavod, and therefore we don't accept anything you say. Okay.
With all due respect.
No, I don't. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
The time wasn't on Moshe. The time that he picked Aaron. He didn't realize that Moshe was a leader. His whole time was on Moshe picking his brother for time.
So he says, Rav lachem. Okay. Rav lachem. Ki kol elikum kadoshim yesh loymar. Ki Esav amar. Esav said, Yesh li Rav. V'imkein, al kolpanim ein loy koil. That means you don't have koil. V'chaser ma'at. But v'Yaakov amar yesh li koil. B'li chisaron. V'amar Korach, yesh lachem Rav. You have a lot. Ki al kolpanim chaser matim. That means you're missing. Sharei roitzim atim l'snasos. You want to raise yourselves up. V'hainu chisaron. But the Eda, kulam kedoshim, they are on the level of koil, b'li chisaron. Madua tisnasu al kol hagdolim mikem v'termikem. Korach is saying, you Moshe, you're like Esav. We're like Yaakov. How do you have a right to raise yourself up over people who are greater than you?
You could take the episode also though. You could say Rav lachem, I have a lot. I need some more. Need some more.
No, Korach is telling to Moshe, Rav lachem, right? Rav lachem. Korach is throwing the word Rav at Moshe. So what's he telling Moshe? Rav lachem, right?
Not full, not complete.
So what's he trying to say, right? What's Korach? So Sofer says he's trying to say Rav lachem. Your midah is the midah of Rav. Your midah is the midah of Esav. Okay. One last little tidbit over here. We know that when Korach's genealogy is given, it says Ben Yitzhar, Ben Kahas, Ben Levi. And Rashi points out, but Yaakov Avinu's name is not mentioned, and that's what he meant. That's what he meant in the Berachos Yaakov. What did he say? B'soidem al tavei nafshi b'kolam al techad kavodi. He doesn't want his name associated with the machlokes of Korach v'Adasai. Now says the Chasam Sofer, if Yaakov's name would have been mentioned, then the Soifei Tevos of Yitzhar, Kahas, Levi, Yaakov would have spelled out the word bris. Keilu, there's like some kind of covenant over here, to which there would have been a problem, because we cannot make a bris of machlokes. We can't have a covenant of machlokes. The only place where we find covenant is in next week's parsha, brisi shalom, but not bris by machlokes. And therefore, the Yaakov Avinu did not chas v'shalom want his name associated with the machlokes, because then it would spelled out what? Soifei Tevos bris. Okay, one last one. Even though it's not on the sheet, I'll still tell you anyway. This is not found in the Chasam of Chasam Sofer, but it's mipi hashmua. I didn't personally hear it from the Chasam Sofer, but it's written in the Svarim. It says like this. What's the first word of this week's Parsha? Vayikach Korach. What's the last week? What's the last words of last week's Parsha? The last week's Parsha ends by Yom Hashem Moshe Leimor Ani Hashem Elokeichem. We know that when we say Kriya Shema, we do not say Ani Hashem Elokeichem, but we add on the word MS. Not MS. There's no word in Hebrew MS. It's MS. MS is Sheker. It's a milra. MS. Okay, that's for a different time. Why do we add on that word? But that's not what it says in the Torah. Well, there's a pasuk in Yirmiyah, I believe. Hashem Elokim MS. So it said. It says Chasam Sofer. There's a remez in this week's parsha that we add the word MS on Tani Hashem Elokeichem. Why? Because the gematria of Vayikach Korach is the same as MS. Ani Hashem Elokeichem Vayikach Korach. Vayikach Korach is MS. It's not the same gematria. Small question. It's not. The answer is it is. Because what's the gematria of MS? MS is 441. Vayikach Korach is off by 9. So what you do is you add the 2 words and the 7 letters, and you're good to go. So Vayikach Korach says the Chasam Sofer is a gematria MS. How is MS merumaz in Vayikach Korach besides the gematria? Because we know the Gemara says in Bava Basra that one of the Amaram saw pillars of smoke coming up from the ground, and he placed his ear to the ground. And what was Korach saying? Moshe. MS. V'sairasai. MS. Korach v'adasai. Korach v'adasai.
All sons were saved. The sons were sons of Korach.
So that means Korach in his stage is forcibly has to admit Moshe MS, the Sarasa MS. So Vayikach Korach in a way is also ultimately what happened to the Vayikach Korach. It turned into MS. So that's Ani Hashem Lekechem Vayikach Korach. By the way, why does he have to say MS? Because he denied Tar Shabal Peh, and MS stands for what? What does MS stand for?
Top is probably Torah. Mem is Midrash. And the Aleph is
The Parsha B'chsav starts with Parsha B'chsav starts with Mei Masai. The Gemara starts with what?
The Gemara?
No, the Gemara. The Gemara Brachas. The Gemara Brachas starts with what? What? What does the Gemara start with?
The brachas? Mei Masai. No.
The Aleph is Anochi Hashem Lekecha. The Mem is Mei Masai Koren Eshema Be'arvis. And of course, the Gemara starts with what?
Parshas.
Tana Heichakai, the Kanimei. That's the Aleph Mem Taf. The Aleph is Anochi, the Mem is Me'imasai, and the Taf is Tana Heichakai. So Korach is forcibly admitting of the connection between the Tar Shabal Sav and the Tar Shabal Peh.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.